everyone, and welcome to another episode of Neo Kobe Pizza, the only gaming podcast that floats in soup. My name is Mark B, and joining me today is a gentleman who I have had more than a few interactions with on Mr. Robert Hubbs' live podcast, GVN Live, over at twitch.tv/thegvn. Mr. Nick Tricome, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing all right. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy to have you.
Glad I'm not getting flipped off this time by your animatronic or whatever the GIF, whatever the right word is for on Hubs' podcast.
Hey, you know what? That is entirely Robert's fault. I gave him a picture, and he's like, "Can't you make it animated?" And I was like, "Listen here, motherfucker. This is what you're going to get." And to be fair, he thought it was amusing. But now these days, he's like, "Can't you make it a little happier?" I'm like, "No, you don't understand how this works."
Oh yeah, I do appreciate getting flipped off in 4 different emotions. Makes me feel different ways each time. So.
Oh yeah, and it's constantly changing. So if you don't like the current one, give it a couple of seconds, and there'll be a new one along.
I know. Still don't know what to make of like the crying hype face, but.
Yeah, that was kind of a case where I have a bunch of different little emoticons for that are meant to be for putting together videos. I just haven't had time to do that. But when I went to my artist friend, Mr. Joel Rose, who regular listeners will remember from the second episode, he came up with different possible emotions I could have. And that face was kind of meant to be the closest approximation to like a chibi hooray kind of face. So it's meant to be like, like a really excited, enthusiastic flipping you off.
Your face says excitement, enthusiasm. Your hands say rage.
Well, I mean, you can be excitedly angry, I think.
Yeah. I think there's instances of that being true. But anyway, you brought me in to talk. Well, I asked if I could talk about something on here. So since this is your show, why don't you do the honors?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's you reached out to me because I was looking for people to record an episode of the podcast with a couple of different ideas, and we kind of agreed that the thing that we wanted to talk about, that we were the most comfortable with here, was Persona 4 to a certain extent. Partly because it's easy ground for us to tread, and partly because it's something that we're both really passionate about talking about, just in general.
I absolutely adore this game. Everything about it, even the dungeons. I've seen people say these are just really long hallways, but there were moments based on how the story turned out where I was just kind of acting emotionally through them, based on the circumstances. Can we go into spoilers with this already? Because
I kind of feel like anybody coming into this podcast understands that there's going to be spoilers to a certain extent, but I will be certain to tag it in the description. So go nuts, man. Go nuts.
I can do it right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, so the one where Naoto gets kidnapped, I trucked through that thing. Like, I was just going past every single shadow to get to the end. I was, like, just on a rampage through that thing. You ever see that clip of Steve Austin, like, coming back in the
yeah, like right
angle?
after it was, he had been in the bar waiting, and all of a sudden the Alliance
the
is
limo
beating the
pulls
shit out
out,
of him.
it pulls up, and he gets the pole cube and just beats up all the WCW and ECW guys.
And then he just comes out and just wrecks shop, yeah.
That is, like, the best summary I have of going through that dungeon. I did not deal with any shadow directly unless they were in my way, and they got their ass kicked.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with that one. I had that one. I definitely had that response with the Nanako dungeon, I want to say.
Did I say Nanako the first?
Naoto.
I said, oh man, I don't know why I still get them confused, but yeah, Nanako's dungeon, I just went on a rampage, and people are going to probably call me out for how well I know this game now, getting those two mixed up. Wow, but yeah, when Nanako got kidnapped, it was just full on rage mode.
And that definitely speaks to the experience and just honestly how damn good it is, how well written it is. And there's a lot to that. Now, I think part of it is probably worth establishing where we come into the franchise from, because you had mentioned that you just like the Persona 4 Golden in particular is your first exposure to it.
Yeah, so if you want me to go into full detail about it,
yeah, go ahead.
Basically, me beating this game was something almost 4 years in the making. I remember I got my Vita because I wanted it as a way to play MLB The Show, because I didn't have a PS3 at the time, and I figured the PS3 was kind of, the clock was ticking on that. So I wanted something where I knew it would kind of get supported for a few years down the line, and now the show isn't even on that system anymore. But yeah, I got my Vita for that. It turns out a few of my friends all got Vitas too, so very rare situation to be a Vita owner, but not only that, have a circle of friends that also have a Vita. I feel like that's not a common occurrence in today's gaming community.
No, it's with consoles maybe, but the Vita was a tough sell for a lot of people,
But
unfortunately.
it is such a beautiful handheld, and I love it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, my friend Bobby got it, and he said, I got this game Persona 4. It's awesome. I mean, this is a few months later because I remember I got it the holiday 2012 when it came out. But Persona 4 Golden came out in the spring.
I believe Golden actually did come out in the US closer to, I want to say, fall? North America, November 2012.
Okay, so I was off by that, but I got my Vita that holiday for Christmas. Again, basically for the show. But my friend Bobby also got it, and he just said, "Hey man, there's this game Persona 4. It's a really good RPG." And for the longest time, I was like, I don't know, because I've never really been into JRPGs. Turn-based combat was just something I accepted as not being for me. But we got to the summer, and he just said, "Here, I'm done with it. Just borrow it. Borrow it. You need to play this game." So I had his copy for months on end, and never play. Still didn't play it. And I remember going on X, getting in Xbox parties with my friends, and they were all quoting stuff from the comic dub from Him's Day, where it was no one ate dinner that night and just drunk Dojima quotes, stuff like that. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
gee,
but
name something that starts with the letter F. Steak.
Steak.
Very good.
Yeah, they were quoting stuff from that. I didn't know what they were talking about, and they kept getting on me for not having played Persona 4 yet. And I finally caved one day, started playing it, and that week, Bobby comes up, asks for his game back. I'm like, fine, so I gotta go and buy the game. But by that point, I was hooked. And this is happening when I was in college, so I got a good chunk through the game by like spring 2013, I would say, until I kind of completely stopped playing. But I had the save file still all those years, and then I just came back to it like toward the end of this summer because I had just beaten Catherine in July, and I was like midway through August where I was like, oh, I should probably beat Persona 4. That'd be a good idea. And I picked the game up right before you have to go rescue Kanji, and it was just a straight up just binge on that game up until the beginning of November, and I beat it, and I got the golden ending, and I nearly cried like several different times. I hope that was a coherent story because oh man.
No, it definitely was, and it's interesting to me to see where different people come into the franchise from because I've been in it for years at this point. So it's always interests me when somebody's like, "Well, Persona 4 or Persona 4 Golden was my first game," because I appreciate that, especially because for years I've been kind of hoping as a fan of the franchise to get that game that is instantly accessible where you can say, listen, I know that you don't play JRPGs, or I know that, you can't get into the Mega 10 series in particular, but play this game. Trust me, it'll work for you. And Persona 4 definitely feels like that game. And that actually kind of leads pretty well into our discussion topic for it, because, as I said, I've been playing the Mega 10 franchise for years at this point. My first game in the franchise was the first one released in the US, which was SMT Persona on the PlayStation. The first RPG, I should say, because I never really played the Jack Brothers games that came before that.
So wait, the original Persona 1 was your first SMT game.
Yes.
Okay, so we both started in that respective sub-series, but you were there from the beginning and expanded outward, and I'm just here like, hey, Catherine's cool too, and I'm all in on 5.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the thing to keep in mind is that the original Persona, and I've gone on record saying this a couple of times, is not the best game.
Okay.
It's mechanically unfriendly. The narrative is much harder to recommend, and even playing the remade PlayStation Portable version, I played this on live stream on 2 separate days until my audience basically told me, please stop playing this fucking game. We don't want to watch it anymore. Which is the first time I've ever had that happen. Like, I've played legitimately bad, awful games, and people have been on board. I played Hannah Montana, the movie, the video game.
Dude, my sister was all about that game when it came out on the Nintendo Wii, and she immediately realized it was a crappy game and stopped. She was 12 at the time, so.
We live streamed the whole goddamn thing. We live streamed the whole goddamn thing. My fucking audience made memes about that. I still get people telling me when there's a character customization option to, quote, put on the Brazil dress, unquote, which is a reference to a dress that literally looks like the Brazilian flag in Hannah Montana, the movie, the game. It's just so bad. But we got through that game, and people were telling me for the first Persona, please stop playing this. We don't want to watch this anymore. It is not good. So, despite that, I continued on with the franchise for pretty much that point onward. So I played the second Persona.
Is
Nocturne.
Igor in it?
Igor is in all of the Persona games.
So he is in all of them. All right, because I feel like just seeing him would make me want to just keep pushing through.
Yeah, it's if you can get it on the cheap, I think like for $5-10. I think it's $10 now on PSN. If you can get it for like $5, I'd say it's worth it.
Even though, like, I'm pretty sure Igor is someone who should not be trusted, but
He has never betrayed the characters in any of the games. I think he definitely has his own motives.
he has, but he just makes me uneasy, man. And if 5, he is the warden, and if you cross him, he will fucking kill you. Oh my
I'm sure.
God. That deep voice, man, that's terrifying.
I don't know why they replaced the English voice actor for that. I'm pretty sure. I know the Japanese voice actor passed away for Igor. I didn't know that the English voice actor passed away.
Maybe they wanted it to match. I don't know. I actually kind of dig it, but that's getting into a whole nother topic. Anyway.
Yeah, it's the core point is that I've been following along with the franchise for years, and it's just Mega 10 in general has never been something that's really been accessible in the West. Japan likes the Mega 10 franchise quite a bit. It's not on the same caliber sales-wise in terms of something like a Final Fantasy or a Dragon Quest, but it is close. And that's not nothing. So when you're talking about a franchise that consistently does well in Japan, the fact that it never translated to any kind of great success for a Western audience was always kind of disappointing, especially when you had really, really good games in that franchise like SMT3 Nocturne or Digital Devil Saga during the early days of the PlayStation 2 that you wanted people to love and appreciate and jump on board with, and just those games never took off, never became anything. It was disappointing.
I'll chime in here with that. I think the thing, because I grew up with the PS2 era, and so basically what was that? From 6 to maybe like 14 years old was probably my lifespan during the PS2.
Yeah, it would be from like 2000 until like 2010, pretty much.
Yeah, so yeah, that adds up basically to then. But like, I mean, my thing is, I kind of always knew in the back of my mind like these games existed, but to me, as someone on the outside looking in all those years, it was like, okay, there's these games, but they're super Japanese. I probably wouldn't like them. I'm not even going to bother. Was that kind of feeling you got that other people had toward it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's Nocturne in particular is one of those games where if you are looking at it from the outside looking in, it's decidedly Japanese. And it's decidedly a grind fest, and it's decidedly a painful experience. You have to be the sort of person who is really a diehard fan of the genre to get into what something like a Nocturne or a Digital Devil Saga is laying down.
Yeah, and on the mass market appeal factor, like that hurts Atlas, but it also benefits it because I feel like the thing that Atlas does more than most game publishers and developers is that they just really seem to embrace the fact that they make these weird niche games, and they just kind of go about with this attitude. It's like, okay, if one of them makes them big, all right, that's awesome. Seems like they really took it and ran with it with 4, and then kind of bringing 3 into that, and now 5 is like, all right, this is our game.
Yeah, and it's interesting because 3 is the first game to really approach that idea of being all things for everyone in a lot of respects. But it did better than its predecessors, but it was never a huge success in and of itself. It was a success for Atlas, to be sure, but not on the level of what we've seen from them recently. So you kind of look at Persona 3, which was successful-ish, but really only managed to generate significant response insofar as they were able to bring out the expanded FES edition and an anime named Trinity Souls, the most notable part of it being you probably don't even remember that it exists. But then you look at Persona 4, right? Persona 4 comes out in 2008. And then over the course of the next couple of years, what do we get? We get a re-release on the Vita in Persona 4 Golden, 2 fighting games, a dungeon crawler on the DS, a rhythm game, 2 different animes, and a re-release of Persona 3 on the PSP, on top of a brand new set of anime movies based around Persona 3. Suddenly, with the advent of Persona 4, and probably more accurately Persona 4 Golden, Persona as a franchise just exploded.
Like stepping back and looking at the series as a whole, you can definitely tell it's a slow burn, and 3 was kind of starting to capture what it wanted to be, like you said, and really start to figure out what the accessibility was there. I think the problem with why it didn't catch on at first was because that game just straight up, it's a much darker game than 4. 4 will get dark, but at its face, it's pretty bright and cheery. Where 3 is just, yeah, that's a gun that you point at your head to summon your persona.
Yeah, and it's I feel like this is
Even though
probably
it's not technically a gun, but
yeah, it's a gun for the purposes of the aesthetic. Like I have more than a few people that I know who are kind of iffy with like gun suicide that see that and they're still just kind of like, eh.
I was up in arms about it at first when I started playing 4 for the first time, and I had friends show me 3, and then at a certain point, I just kind of accepted that's what 3's about. It's probably not as bad as I'm making it out to be. And quite honestly, playing 3 now, I'm still very early in, but I'm pretty glad that Junpei just brought up, hey, why do these have to look like guns?
Yeah, it's I appreciate that they at least lampshade the reason for it. So even if you're a little bit on the fence about it as a player, you can kind of nod and go along with it.
Yeah. 3's dark, but it still has some humor in there.
It does, and it's I think it's our core thesis here is probably going to be just why did Persona 4 become the game that benefited from all of this success? But it is worth noting, as you said, it was kind of a slow burn, and even looking at stuff other than Persona 3 from a Western perspective, Persona 4 Golden in specific, but Persona 4 in general, really just benefited from Atlas consistently plugging away at the grindstone and just getting really lucky on a lot of rolls of the dice.
Yeah, and it might also be important to bring up too. There's at least one retry for every game. I mean, Persona 1 got a re-release on PSP, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine the PSP version had some improvements over the original.
Yes, it's a big aesthetic improvement. There's much less problems with loading time. It offers an easy mode, so if you don't want to deal with the insane amount of grinding that the game requires you to deal with, you can turn that on, etc., etc.
Yeah, I don't know about Persona 2, but Persona 3 it got FES or Fez. I've been calling it Fez.
Yeah, it's short for festival, so it's just Fez, whatever is probably fine.
Yeah, Persona 3 got Fez, and then the portable version, and Persona 4 eventually got Golden. So, there's that element too where the original game comes out, and yeah, it does a lot of things right, but there are these things where, okay, this could be improved, and they actually went back and improved them and made the game better and re-released it.
And it is also worth noting that there are remakes of both Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, though hilariously, we only got the original version of Eternal Punishment and the remake of Innocent Sin. I don't know why.
Yeah, like I said, all the games have had redos, for lack of a better term, to iron things out. So that's something not entirely unique to the Persona series, but something I probably instantly associate with it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. And I feel like it's interesting because like if you look at the period of time from when Persona 4 came out or slightly before that, like 2007, 2006, and you trace it forward, you can kind of sort of see that there was this strong swell of support for Atlas in general just because of the decisions that they made and the games they chose to bring out. And it just happened to pay off with Persona 4 Golden and turn Atlas from a company that was just releasing SMT games and anything they could get their hands on into kind of sort of exclusively a Persona 4 factory for a couple of years.
Yeah, slow burn. Also, I mean, right system too, because I mean, what else was there to play on Vita at the
Oh
time?
yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of people give Persona 4 Golden credit for being a system seller for the Vita, and that's not anything to sneeze at because the Vita, especially in the West, was a hard sell for a lot of people. You had your early adopters, your early tech heads who were going to buy anything, but outside of that, you're talking about a $300 handheld console, which looks great, sure, but only had a small smattering of games, and outside of an Uncharted title, most of what they had available for that platform was bullshit. And then all of a sudden,
Uh,
here comes.
the show was pretty good, but that's coming from a huge baseball fan. I digress.
No,
Whatever.
it's fine. It's like, I mean, the show in general has always been kind of a hit or miss series. But I mean, like, as I recall, that particular year, it was good across all platforms. But it's you're kind of looking for the Vita to have its own unique games, I guess, in a lot of respects.
Yeah, was it? I mean, Little Deviants was one of the things they were trying to sell that system on, and that wasn't a good idea.
No, I rented that game, and that game was the shits.
Black Ops Declassified,
Oh,
that
that
didn't
game hurt
work.
my heart.
I love Black Ops for that. That was unfortunate.
Yeah, it's like I've never been a huge fan of Call of Duty, but I like the games for what they are. But that game, holy shit. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, Persona 4 Golden really was the flag bearer for that system, and if I never got another game for Vita other than that, I'd be pretty okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's worth noting that even now, at the point where, the Vita is kind of falling out of favor in a lot of respects, I still recommend to people, if you have $40 or $50 just lying around somewhere, get yourself a PS TV, buy Persona 4 Golden, play it on your TV if you have to. Just play that game. It's worth playing. It is the best version of Persona 4 you are going to see. And like just the idea of going to somebody and saying, "Listen, buy this console that you may only own for this one game and play this game," sounds like stupid when you say it out loud, but no, Persona 4 is good enough to justify just buying this one console that you might only get this one game for.
And let's face it too, you are not going to see everything this game has to offer the first time
Oh
around
no,
too.
not even close.
I mean, I beat it. I only maxed out so many social links. I don't want to play it again immediately, maybe like a year from now to see what I missed, but yeah, there's a lot of else to see in that game that I just never even I probably don't even know it's there.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that Atlas, as I said, made some good decisions prior to Persona 4 Golden coming out that kind of really retroactively elevated that game's public perception. Because again, let's not forget, during the years between the launch of Persona 4 and the launch of Persona 4 Golden, Atlas released a pair of surprisingly large hits in Catherine, which was not expected to really be anything, but came out during a summer dead season and was an astonishingly interesting. I'm not going to necessarily say good because I have issues with that game, but it was well liked. It was well liked and people enjoyed it. And it came out during a dead period and sold gangbusters for the company and got their name out there amongst people who might not have known about them otherwise. And then before that, Demon Souls.
Yeah.
Holy shit, Demon Souls.
I'm sure Sony's still mad about letting that one get through or letting that one go, but
Yeah, and Atlas absolutely turned that into a major win, not just for fans of From Software or fans of the Souls series, but for themselves by being that company that stepped up and said, you know what, the Kingsfield series has never been anything. Armored Core has only gone so far, but we feel this game has potential. We're going to bring this game out where Sony didn't. And that paid off for them in spades.
yeah, and I do just want to state for the record, I love Catherine.
I mean, that's fine. It's I love the
I just want to say
No, it's
that.
fine. I love the idea of Catherine. Some of the narrative elements don't necessarily work for me. It's just that I feel like the game
I
has.
want a bar exactly like the Stray Sheep just to go to every
No,
night.
I could definitely see that. That is a really nice place to go.
I'm not going to drink as nearly as hard as Vince does, but just sit in the booth for hours about nothing.
Dude, if I had a guy who would randomly describe all of the neat stuff surrounding particular types of alcohol to me, I'd probably drink more than I do.
What, just a voice in your head?
Yeah, hello, and thank you for drinking this. Here's your bit of trivia for the evening. I don't know what the hell I just drank, but okay, thanks.
Living in that world must be so grand, aside from, all the hell spawn and demons and stuff, and the fact that the boss still hangs there.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, so, assuming that you live there after the fact, once Vincent's kicked his ass, you're okay. Assuming you live in that timeline. If you live in the timeline where he ends up becoming the devil himself, uh,
Great ending. But anyway, getting back to Atlas's decisions, it definitely does go back to that slow burn too, where just a bunch of little decisions, but right decisions eventually built up, and now we're here to the point where a Persona 5 delay just is heartbreaking.
yeah, and it's amazing because individually, each decision that Atlas makes over the course of that 4, 5, 6 year period doesn't seem like it's any more important than any other. But taken all together, you get from a point where Atlas is a veritable unknown outside of a diehard group of fans who love their franchises to a point where Atlas is actually now kind of sort of a big deal. Actually, I can put this into more direct terms. When Atlas was purchased by Index Corporation, I want to say right around this time period, that was not news. That was not really a conversation that we were having. It was just one day Atlas was owned by Index, and it was, oh, okay. And then when Atlas was kind of on the chopping block and was going to be sold off to somebody because Index was going to hell, I want to say it was 2014 now. That was big news. Everybody was talking about that. And that's an amazing transition for a company who, again, 6, 7, 8 years previous had been bought out by somebody and most people didn't even report on it.
I don't really recall any massive interference by Sega. It seems like they're just letting them go.
Yeah, it's a lot of the changes that have come in the SMT franchise in general came in before Sega was even involved in Atlas's day-to-day affairs. And for the most part, there's not been any significant indication that they've been trying to change things at all, really.
Well, that said, Sega's not really in a position to do that. They're trying to build up as much goodwill as possible, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is probably like a completely separate discussion, but I feel like Bandai Namco and Sega in particular are both kind of looking to companies like Atlas, who've been successful catering to a specific type of audience, and saying, okay, what can we do to cater to that audience? And that's why we're seeing, more Yakuza titles, a renewed interest in Valkyrie Chronicles, etc., etc., etc.
It seems like, too, that those catering to that fan base and just building up, along with making those little right decisions too, it just seems like it kind of goes to that thing where, or that idea of if you try to please everyone, you please no one, and that Atlas seems to have a grip on who they know likes their games. It seems to have kind of just slowly built bigger and bigger, if that makes any sense.
I agree, though I think it's worth noting that Persona, the modern Persona games, I should say specifically, are a marked departure from the type of stories that Atlas normally has told in their games up to this point. So I think it's kind of a case of they're not necessarily trying to please everybody so much as they are just trying to diversify their core skill set, their core franchise. So where, they still keep the idea of like dark secrets and demons and psychological damage and, investigating concepts from psychology, whether it be, Freudian psychology, Jungian psychology, whatever, and interspersing it with stuff from H.P. Lovecraft or inspired by, like the darker sides of religion. They can still take those sorts of concepts and make them lighter. It's all in how you present it. And I think Persona represents the closest that we've come to Atlas saying, you know what? Let's make a Mega 10 game that is as close to being for everyone as a game about summoning a penis monster in a wheelbarrow is going to be.
It took me a second to register that one. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, Mara is definitely one of the things that I'm always going to bring up about the Persona franchise, because it's a giant green penis in a fucking wheelbarrow.
I completely forgot that was a thing at the game. I remember seeing that card and I was like, I don't think I want that one.
Yeah, there's also Belphegor, who's just a demon in like weird footy socks on the toilet.
Oh man, the meetings when they show up to draw those things must be amazing.
I don't know what the fuck is wrong with me that I keep enjoying the shit, but whatever. But it's worth noting that Persona 4 is basically the closest that you're going to get to being a wide audience friendly version of an SMT title. As you had mentioned earlier, SMT3 was not the game that was going to catch on because even with its more audience friendly presentation, it's still pretty damn dark.
I mean, the game happens at well, the core the core gameplay element always happens at night. I mean, the protagonist is dressed pretty darkly. He seems like a pretty. My one friend put it probably the best way. He said it's the emo game of the series.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it, but it's also, although the aesthetic is decidedly emo, the lead character even looks like he like fell out of an emo band. But it's also worth noting that from a color scheme perspective, from a conceptual perspective, this is definitely a game that, even while trying to be more readily accessible, is darker in theme and tone. You know, the identifying color for the game is blue, like a dark blue.
At the same time, though, that game did originally come out in the mid 2000s, so that kind of checks out for that time period too.
It does, but you weren't necessarily going to sell the casual market on a game where the main character's wandering through town, like past some coffins, and like everything is a dark color, and the theme of the game is kind of, distrust, isolation, things like that. It's a game that still checks out with like an appropriate subset of people, but it's not like everyone. Like it's not going to be the sort of game that's going to bring in people who weren't super into your franchise to begin with. Like that's a game that's more preaching to the choir, I think.
Yeah, and probably going into development of 4, they probably needed to make a much more colorful game.
Yeah.
There was probably a certain point where it's like we need to make something at least happier at face value.
Yeah, and its Persona 4 is really stands in stark contrast to 3 in a lot of ways. It's the immediate and most obvious change is the arc color of yellow, whereas, you had your dark blue that like, cast that kind of dark shadow over things. You have this arc color of yellow for Persona 4 that's this very bright and happy. And that still stands in contrast to the fact that it's a game where you're talking about murders. But even that, like the game is still mostly remembered as being a lighter game, despite the fact that 3 people are straight up fucking killed in the narrative.
I can't really compare it to 3 because I'm only so far in, but 4, like just the relationships you have with everyone around town and mainly the investigation team seems to take center stage for that more so than the actual mystery.
Yeah, it's definitely a game that feels a lot more friendly. It feels a lot more lived in universally. Like you get to know people, you get to like people, and you can see the interactions between people and how well they get along with one another. It's a game that encourages you to like its audience or to like its cast because it likes its cast. And your opinion may differ once you've gotten through the game to a certain extent, but I kind of feel like Persona 3 is a game where it didn't necessarily like its own cast as much, and it's easier to like that cast if you come to Persona 3 from games like Persona 4 Arena or Persona Q, where the infectious, I want you to like me mentality that Persona 4 presents kind of rubs off on the game a bit more.
Yeah. Setting I think might be part of that too because Inaba just by comparison it feels a lot more connected and I mean that's kind of a given for a small town, but I feel like the shopping district is only a short walk away from the school. So like there's a much better sense of familiarity there even when you're first starting up the game where you take kind of one lap around town and you're like, "Okay, I got it." Whereas the city in Persona 3 just going around it the first time, I'm like, this feels a lot more segmented, and it actually shows the route you have to take, that you have to get on the train. It's actually further away. You can't just walk there. I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, it's. I feel like in a lot of respects, it's part of it definitely comes down to the fact that Persona 4 is a completely different game from anything in Atlus's wheelhouse. The closest comparison piece is Persona 3, and even then, there's still a lot of bleak, still a lot of mechanical unfriendliness, still a lot of yuck in Persona 3 that Persona 4 kind of puts aside. And I feel like while that's not necessarily going to be the game for everyone, it is definitely a game that makes Megaten as a franchise and Persona as a sub-franchise instantly more accessible for people who don't want these games that are 100 hours because you're grinding for 60 of them, featuring miserable protagonists and, miserable worlds, often in the death throes or that have already died, and you have to, deal with post-apocalypse.
Also, I feel like I've been trashing 3 here. I do like 3 a lot so far. Like I said, still early in. It's just weird, like seeing you're seeing all the things where you're like, okay, they figured this out when they got to 4, but
Yeah, and I feel like that's important because, like, 3 is not a bad game. Let it not be said that 3 is a bad game.
I do like it a lot. Like I want to keep trucking through this thing.
Yeah, it's narratively speaking, it is not my favorite, just because I don't like some of the choices that they make in the game, and I don't like the overall arc theme of it kind of being about a bunch of people who don't trust one another and ultimately eventually kind of have to grow into that position by force.
I'm kind of embracing that thing. I don't trust Shinji at all.
I don't blame you, but it's
I
it's
I don't I don't trust a guy that wears a turtleneck suit and has long hair. There's just something ingrained in me that says don't trust that guy.
he looks like a record producer. Fuck him.
And also Mitsuru, I'm like, when you go to the tower and she has the red armband on, I'm like, is she a Nazi? Like she's sending Nazi vibes right now.
Yeah, I don't think they thought that out particularly well. Like I really don't think they were going for, Nazi vibes because everybody has the C's armband, but holy shit, maybe we shouldn't have used like a red armband with like distinct angular black letters. Like maybe we should have gone for something a little bit different there, guys, but yeah, Misuru's all right.
You could have made it blue. Yukari's alright. She did try to shoot me when I walked in the door, but it's alright.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, she was scared out of her mind. So it happens. I have my issues with the narrative of Persona 4. Like I said, I don't like that particular thematic execution. I don't like where they go with it, but I don't hate the game. I think it's a good game overall, but it's clear and you can tell like within your first few hours there are definitely changes that Persona 4 made that even if you are a fan of Persona 3, you can look at and you can say these are definitely changes that improve the experience for me as a player.
Yeah, if we're going to get into gameplay, because we haven't really talked about that yet, full party control is a big one for me. Because that first battle in 3 where you have the whole party together, I was like, oh no, I can't give them a direct command of what to do.
Yeah, and there's going to be at least one instance where they're going to cast a spell that plays to the enemy's strengths and is going to fuck you for that turn.
Oh no, I fully accepted it. It hasn't happened yet, but I fully accepted the fact that someone's gonna fuck me over at some point.
Yeah, Persona 4 for the Persona 3 portable, excuse me, has the ability to turn on full team control. So, at the very least, Atlas eventually said, "You know what? This is a thing our fan base wants in Persona 3. Let's give that to them." And Persona 3 Portable, despite the removal of some of the aesthetic elements, like they couldn't put in all of the cutscenes and whatnot, is in a lot of respects the best version of Persona 3 you can get. And it also has that option of playing as a female protagonist if that's a thing that you want to do. But the fact that it took them 3 games to get to that point is kind of interesting to me, I think.
So 3 was 2006, right?
I believe so, yes.
2006, 2007. 4 was 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So team control was a brand new thing for 4 that they hadn't, that there was no way for them to really figure out. Well, they couldn't have figured it out for 3, but by the time they get to portable, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like they probably could have fit it in for FES, and I believe that the reason why there was kind of a rigid stance on that was because it plays into the theme of trust within the narrative of Persona 3. From a narrative perspective, it makes a certain amount of sense to have that in there and make it be mandatory. But from a mechanical perspective, fuck you, I don't want to deal with that bullshit.
It's not a problem right now, but I could see it being a problem later. Like I said, I've accepted that fact.
Yeah, it's also worth noting in the comparison to part three, one of the best changes that they made was making the social link circle much more directly associated to the protagonist. And I don't know how far you are in part three, but the first social link that you, or one of the first social links, I should say, I don't know if it's the very first one, though I think it is.
It's for C Squad, isn't it?
The fucking one guy who is in your class, he's just this dope who's like, hey, we should be friends.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's the first social link.
He just shows up to you.
Yeah, and he's like, hey, we should be friends. By the way, I want to talk about the fact that I totally want to bone one of the teachers.
Yeah, I'm playing nice with him so far. I can't say I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and it's that's a lot of Persona 3. It's you have this wide roster of characters that you can interact with, and fuck,
For by comparison, how your relationship develops with Yosuke and Chie at the beginning of the game is way more natural. Now that I'm thinking of it.
yeah, exactly. And that's important within the confines of how the social links are structured because in Persona 3, the only social links that you can get in your party, at least playing as the male main character, is with the girls. Specifically with Yukari, Mitsuru, and Fuka. And then I believe in the expanded version FES, you also get the option to have a social link with Aigis. So that's four. You cannot have a social link with any of your male friends. You cannot really, like, make friends with any of your male friends. What the fuck is that?
Huh, that's weird.
Yeah, and in the Persona Portable version, in the PSP version, the reverse is true for the female main character. The only social links you can really get are with the male characters. So you can have social links with Junpei and with Ken and with Shinji and with Akihiko. But you can't have social links with, Yukari and Mitsuru and Fuka. And it's weird, like, that they have that specifically segregated social link set up where you can only have social links within your party with the people that you can bone.
That's I don't know what kind of message that sends.
Well, the major message that it sends to me is that your boner is the meta plot of the universe.
Okay, but yeah, no, that's just a weird, really weird thing to put into the game. I don't. And this is reportable, right?
That's for all the different versions. Like, Portable is the one that makes it the most obvious conceptually because the female main character changes all of her social links within the party over to the male characters instead of the female characters. So it's obvious that they did it that way. But again, in Persona 4, all of the social links that you deal with, the vast majority of them are directly interconnected to your life. Every single party member that you can get is a social link. When you start meeting people outside of your core party, it's, Uncle Dojima and Nanako are two of your social links because you live with them and you interact with them every day.
Mark, let me ask you something now, real quick. How do you take your coffee?
Cream, no sugar.
Where are you, Nanako?
I thought Nanako has sugar in her coffee.
Ah, man, I forgot the thing. I ruined
It's like,
the
what
joke.
are you, a pussy? Yeah, surprise me.
Coming right
yeah,
up,
surprise
madam.
me. And he just pours the fucking coffee in his face.
My favorite will always be black. Don't try and act up, you sissy.
Yeah, go fuck yourself, you little bitch. Yeah, no,
That
but
comic,
I fucking love that comic.
Is
I
great.
wish
It
that
is forever warts my image of Dojima, but whatever.
I wish that that had actually been completed all the way through because that would have been hilarious. But what we got was a treasure, and we should love it always.
Fabulous compliment to the game.
Absolutely,
But
especially the
yeah,
voice acted version. The voice acted version is amazing.
yeah, getting back to the relationships. I'm so mad I messed up that joke, but getting back to the relationships in the game, yeah, everything felt really natural. Like, especially you brought up the outside stuff. That I think that really worked well because the time management element of that game, the stress from that was real, man.
Oh yeah, it's like even if you have a schedule in mind for how to do everything, it still sucks.
Oh man, I will never forget this. It was early on in the four. So I joined the soccer team. I joined I joined the band, and then you walk out of the classroom. Daisuke walks up to you. He's like, "You're coming to soccer practice, right?" Chie walks up to you. She's like, "You're hanging out on the roof with me, right?" And then Yosuke walks up to you. He's like, "Yeah, you're coming to Juness, right?" And then Ayane walks up to you and goes, "You're coming to band practice, right?" And I'm just standing there going, I don't know.
What the fuck? Yeah, like the worst is when you have like six that just trigger for some reason in a day. Like if you have like a test day and you just get that to kick off like right on that day. It's you've got, Yosuke, Yukiko, Chie, Naoto, Kanji, just this procession of people coming up to you in the fucking hall. Hey, we're gonna hang out later, right? Hey, we're gonna hang out later, right? Here, we're gonna hang out later, right? Fuck you!
And no, and for me, it got to a certain point where if I knew I had to hang out with someone on that particular day, I just like did not even make eye contact with anyone else on the way to them
Yeah, no, screw that. That was
because I knew if I talked to them, I could not say no.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's you have to give them these really non-committal maybe because if you go and you talk to them and like the only option is yes or no, it's just gonna be like, fuck, I guess.
But in that situation, even when you don't get that situation, when it's just after school and you can walk up to anyone, just saying no, I don't want to hang out, and then they just go, oh, okay, and then that dialogue box comes up that says, Kanji, for instance, looks a bit sad. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just end up feeling so bad.
I didn't mean it, bro. Shit. It's also really worth noting that Golden does that even better in a lot of respects because they add in two brand new social links that weren't in the original game, and both of them are introduced in a way that ties them into your storyline and makes them feel more like actual important parts of the narrative than just, the kid that you're teaching, language to or whatever so he doesn't fail out of middle school.
Yeah, that's true. That's the thing too. The only Persona game I know beginning to end right now is Golden, and the original version of that doesn't have Marie in it.
Or Adachi as a actual social link.
Oh, Adachi's not a social link?
Nope. He's in the game, but he's not a social link. And
I didn't want to hang out with him anyway. That's fine.
I feel like going through his social link path actually gives you a certain degree of understanding for why he is the way that he is, and I appreciated it for what it was.
Nah, I didn't like Adachi from the beginning. I just did not like him. Every time he showed up in my house, I just got mad. I got irrationally mad and would just this is the thing too, Persona 4, like it might sound weird, but playing that game like got physical reactions out of me. Like Adachi, there were points where if I was home alone, I would just start yelling at my Vita just to get the fuck out of my house.
I mean, Adachi is a piece of shit, and that's not in any way, shape, or form, a contestable thing.
Yeah, but I didn't know that yet.
I mean, he kind of looks like a dumbass. He kind of looks like a fucking dumbass at all points. So it's not unreasonable to just look at him and be like, you have a stupid jerk face, and I want you out of my house.
The best is when that moment clicks though, because like it actually the moment it clicks when everyone kind of figures it out, it's like, oh yeah, he was there he was like there every step of the way. Why did he tell us that much? And yeah, I did have a bit of a spoiler alert because of the anime and watching clips of all the funny moments from that, and you kind of see things along the way. But I always kind of knew once you got to the end, it was like Dachi might be a problem. But yeah, still.
Yeah, it's handled well enough, I think, and I feel like again the social link is worth going through just because it gives you a bit more understanding to why he is the way that he is. Doesn't necessarily make him likable, but it makes him understandable. And I feel like for somebody in his position, it's helpful to at least appreciate why he's doing all of these things that he's doing, even if you don't necessarily like those things. I always look at it from the perspective of the best kind of bad guy villain heel that you can get in a story is somebody who has complex motivations that make them believe that they're right, that you can empathize with even if you know they're wrong.
Nah, fuck Adachi.
No, fuck Adachi, but I mean, he's a well-written character, I'll say that. He's a well-written character. Fuck that guy, he's a piece of shit, but they did a good job with fleshing him out. Certainly, there are characters that go full heel in prior games where it's kind of like, eh. Whereas Adachi feels like an appropriately complex character. Fuck him, he's still a dick, but
Yeah, but I think the larger point we were getting at before we spiraled into the Adachi hate train was basically I think the relationships that you build with these characters and just how they're laid out is a big reason why Persona 4 Golden, I guess in particular, is the game where it clicked.
and it's worth noting though that that spiraling into the Adachi hate train is important because how many RPGs can you say that you've played where you have that kind of passionate reaction about anybody?
Can I tell you like one more story about my time playing through that game?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so when you get to the Adachi boss fight and he does, his spoiler, he does his transformation because no boss in a Japanese RPG has just one form. I'm going through the battle. We're doing our part. And have you seen Civil War?
The movie?
Captain America?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I'm fighting this I'm fighting the boss. I'm getting this help down. I think we're there. We need, one more good solid hit. I do the analysis with Rise and she's like, "This might be a good idea," and just blurted out of my mouth, just like full on Tony Stark, "Let's kick his ass." Bang. Hit the button, took him down. Fight over. It was amazing.
I feel like from a battle perspective, there are a few things in life that truly give you like this ultimate sense of we got this, than that final sequence in the last battle where, he just stands up, throws his glasses off and is like, "All right, fuck this."
Oh my god. See, I'm going to sound like like some sort of weirdo, like saying that like I was flipping out in front of this handheld device over what was going on, but like it's actually true. And I was texting my friends who have beaten the game already about this every step of the way, and they were probably just laughing their asses off.
I mean, it's a great goddamn ending though. Like it's a great final sequence where he doesn't need the glasses anymore to see the truth, and no, you're just fucking done. That's just it. And it's simple, especially with the way that the visuals are set up, where they're still just kind of like doofy headed chibis for a certain extent. But no, it's a powerful moment. It's affecting, and that's I think another big part of on the whole why something like Persona 4 Golden succeeded where prior games failed, because Persona 4 gets to the root of the story it's trying to tell. Even if you don't like that story, it does a very good job telling that story.
Yeah, everything in a way is kind of relatable too. I mean relatable in some fashion. I mean we've all, especially we've all been through high school. I mean we've all had different runs through it. I mean I was pretty much a nobody in there, but it was weird. Like I don't want to put this. That game basically felt like, it's going to sound weird saying this, but that felt like everything I wanted high school to be, minus, the murder part.
Yeah, no, it's very down to earth. Like even as you go through something like Persona 3, Persona 3 has a very disconnected quality to it, where you're dealing with actual secret societies and actual like talking robots and like a police officer who sells you weapons and all this different shit. It's worth noting though that, there's a lot of places that Persona 3 disconnects narratively. You know, if I work for the secret society where we desperately need to stop all these shadows, why in the fuck do I have to pay for my own weapons?
'Cause there needs to be some sort of economy.
No, there doesn't. Mechanically it makes sense. It seems like there should be, but there doesn't really need to be. You could just give me upgraded weapons, or even better, it could just be like what they do in Persona 4. Hey, bring me the component parts of these things that you kill, and I will make them into new shit.
Well, if you're going to the cop directly, he probably needs something back in return because he's doing some really risky things here.
Sure, but why doesn't C's pay him?
Because that could be traced back. I don't know.
I just think it's weird that like C's couldn't figure out a way to make that work. So it's, yeah, here, have this money that I got from like an upside down clock in a dungeon. I apologize for like the black goo that's on it. You're just gonna have to wash it off. Just take that. Give me the gun. Like there's small narrative hiccups in that game. Not even just there. Just in general, there are points where the game feels too sci-fi. The game feels too disconnected. Where it's you eventually get to this point where you know that you're playing a game. Whereas in Persona 4, you can kind of relate to it, as you said, because we've been through high school. It's completely reasonable to kind of go through this weird murder mystery because it's not like we haven't seen that before or empathized with it before. Fuck, Stand By Me is kind of based off of that, and that was in the 90s.
I mean, to be fair, you are in high school in 32. It's just it's different because you're thrown right into the mix of this already in progress fight. already. So
Yeah,
like right from the get go, not really a lot of time to like slowly build up to it.
yeah, 3 kind of really like shoves you into it quickly, and there's a mystery, but it's much more obviously put together. Like, in the very first cinematic in 3, you're walking through a town full of coffins. That's weird. And you kind of just go up from there. Whereas in 4, the first time you get an indication that something is legitimately wrong beyond the pale is when you fall into the fucking TV.
Well, when you hear about that rumor,
Even the rumor is odd, but like it's not beyond the pale, you know?
it piques your curiosity to the point where you're like, oh, what's this?
Yeah, they breadcrumb you a lot more in 4, I think. And I feel like it works to the game's betterment.
For 3, I don't feel like it was necessarily a bad thing because actually more often than not, I hate games that are really slow to start. I don't know. It just felt a bit off with 3. I don't know. Again, there I go, like just comparing 3 to 4 and being like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I do like 3.
Yeah, it's I like 3. I don't hate 3. It's just I do feel like 4 executes better. And that's important, especially because the big question is, going into this, 4 Golden was great. All of the different games that are based off of it was great. 5 is the best-selling game in the franchise so far in Japan, and massive hype in the US for this game right now.
So are we going to talk about what we saw on that live stream now?
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I also want to talk about stuff that we didn't see. That it's like your game needs to do this to keep that hot streak going.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true too. But oh man, after that stream, like I was excited for 5. Now it's like I don't think I've ever been this excited for a game in my life. To the point where it actually hurt when they said it was delayed to April 4th. I'm it's fine. I understand it. It's only going to better the game, but man, that hurt.
Yeah, I really did appreciate that they were actively saying we want to add in more voice acting than is in the Japanese game. Because how often do you hear we want to make a better version than the Japanese version?
When they're delivering the message, when the lead producer's sitting there explaining it, I was going, okay, great, and he starts talking about the quality of the game, and I went, oh no, oh no. And when he just said we want it to be the best as possible, and I'm just sitting there in front of my computer going, don't do it, don't do it. And he just said delayed to April 4th. I just went, ah, no. And then Morgana showed up and he's like, hey, you get the Japanese voiceovers too. It was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people that were kind of like that were kind of being really shitty about that, which was disappointing.
I think I'm someone who's always going to prefer the English dubs, but that's nice to have.
Yeah, I was really glad that they made that announcement. Like I said, it was frustrating seeing people who were like, "That should have been in there in the beginning. Fuck you." And it's just like, come on.
It's free, so not a big deal.
No, I'm happy that it's there. I don't know. I love the English voice acting. I think that the voice actors and actresses that they've hired for the games in general have been great. And from what we saw in the live stream, the casting that they have for this game is top shelf.
The Smash Brothers announcer is the protagonist. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, what, really? But you know what? I'll give the guy a shot.
That's incredible. Yeah, and we were kind of speaking like the trend with the Persona series seems to just be iteration and just kind of building off everything, perfecting it, and that really it seemed like Atlas reached what they wanted the game to be by 3, and then when it got to 4, they figured it out. They perfected the foundation of what that game has to be, and now 5 is just ramping everything up to 11 for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I appreciate certain things that they've already kind of showed off from advertisements, from the trailers, etc., so on. Like, the one thing I definitely appreciate is that there is a very distinct, very different arc presentation and arc color for it. So, Persona 3 had its dark blue, Persona 4 had its bright yellow, and Persona 5 is a distinct blood red. And that's interesting. I don't know how it's going to play in, but the fact that from what we saw in the trailer, a dude ripped his fucking face off.
Yeah, that was pretty hype.
Yeah, it's definitely trying to be, I think, the game that builds players toward what SMT kind of is about, because Persona 3 is very much a dark and morose experience, which borrows some elements from SMT. Part 4 is more cheerful, bright, upbeat, colorful, and presents a world and a universe that is same, but still gets in those thoughts. So it's coming from 4 to 5 because a lot of people are just going to move forward. They're not going to want to move back. You've all of a sudden got this, okay, we have these people who bought 4 and will buy the shit out of 5. What can we do to bring them into the fold so that they're ready when we do another SMT game or when we, do like a remake of Nocturne or whatever the shit. So you're getting this game that's kind of borrowing from the SMT universe and to a certain extent from Catherine, I note. And I feel like that's a good way to get people who are on the outside looking in into this world and be like, hey, it's okay. We're going to bring you where you need to go. We're going to climb the mountain together. And then when we get there, you're going to love it. You're going to think it's great. Just trust me.
But wasn't Catherine like originally just a test for them to figure out how to use the engine for 5?
I don't know if I'd go that far necessarily, but Catherine was definitely meant, I think, as a way for them to acclimate themselves to developing on the next generation consoles at that point. Which is kind of funny, considering that Catherine was the only game that they've released for those outside of Persona 5, which is now also appearing on the PlayStation 4. So that's interesting.
I mean, if it was just a means for them to get acclimated, and they still, for regardless of what you think of it, they turned out a pretty quality title with it. I mean, that's impressive on its own.
Yeah, and you can tell also that they're kind of using an engine that is in line with the Catherine engine there.
Just the aesthetic of it is pretty similar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's the exact same engine, but the style is pretty familiar. Like the way the graphics look, the art style.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the exact same engine, but I definitely feel like it's at least an upgraded version of the engine. They clearly are using the same aesthetic from Catherine in Persona 5, and I don't object to it. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the Catherine aesthetic, but from what I've seen, I feel like Persona 5 does something with it that Catherine didn't for me. And I guess maybe it's the fact that, you're seeing the world of Persona in there instead of, babies with chainsaws grafted to their arms. So like maybe that's helpful for me from an aesthetic purpose to get me more acclimated to that engine. But I don't know. I never liked the aesthetic from Catherine as much as I did Personas 3 and 4, but I do like what they're doing with it in Part 5.
I mean, this is one too where like you're not going to see an anime cutscene, right? And then you see the actual game, and it's in nearly a completely different style. This is one where it's going to mirror the like hand drawn animated scenes as closely as possible. That's more of just technology progressing more than anything, but I that's kind of something you notice immediately with 5 too.
I feel like, for the most part, from what we've seen, there's a lot there that says, okay, this is not going to be a rehash. This is not going to be a retread. They clearly have an idea of where they want to go with this. They clearly have an idea of what they want to make. They know where they want this to go. And it's interesting and different, and it's going to be something that we should be excited for or interested for. The only things that I'm concerned about is the stuff that we haven't really seen anything on yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how, spending so many days in a dungeon at a time is going to work as far as coming back to it, because they did show safe rooms and everything, and that it's probably a good idea to jump in and out. Speaking to my experience in 4, every time someone got thrown in a TV and you had to go get them, it was just an immediate rush. I would just pick the day to go in a TV. It would usually be the day right after and just go get them. I don't exactly know how each dungeon's gonna work, so I'm curious how that's gonna work over the entire year. I'm assuming it's 1 year. That's how 4 and 3 both work.
Yeah, despite the fact that they have clearly rigidly structured dungeons, I really do feel like it's going to be more in line with how Tokyo Mirage Sessions handles its dungeons, where you can probably just plow through a dungeon in 1 or 2 days if you really want to. I don't know if they're going to have like an analog to the Fox in this game where you can heal inside of the dungeon, though that would certainly be nice. But the thing that I'm more interested in from that perspective is with the rigidly structured dungeons, like how much larger or how are they going to compare in terms of scope and size? Because it's clear the game wants to be a stealth game. It has like these heavy stealth mechanics going into the dungeon.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I kind of wasn't ready to see how. I kind of wasn't ready for the stealth elements of it to be as in depth as they were. Like getting caught is you don't want to get caught now. You're not just getting hit first.
Yeah, and it's I like that to a point, but I don't know how well that's going to hold up in a 100-hour game. And let us be clear, from everything that they said, Persona 5 is going to be longer than Persona 4. So if you had a 100-hour experience with Persona 4, buckle the fuck up.
Oh yeah, I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like how long the dungeons actually are because let's not forget you had 10, 11 floor dungeons where it was just run through beat up monster, run through beat up monster, run through beat up monster. And I'm interested to see if the dungeons are as lengthy in terms of combat structures, aesthetics, and whatnot, or if it's going to be that these dungeons get their length as much from the puzzle solving elements. Because not to be a jerk, I was not a super big fan of the way Tokyo Mirage Sessions handled its puzzle mechanics. And if that's kind of what Persona 5 is going to do, that might not be the best way of dealing with it. The weird collect books, place books thing wasn't that bad from what they showed in the trailer. Like, I didn't hate that. But later dungeons in Tokyo Mirage Sessions had you actively avoiding and like getting around spotlights to find the correct path or flipping switches on and off to change panels on a set of floor tiles where you couldn't directly see what the changes were until you walked over them unless your memory was really good. And some of those puzzles got to be a little hinky.
So it sounds like it was something that you would lose track of pretty quickly unless you had the notepad next to you or something.
Yes. And I didn't hate it, but it definitely did sour me on the experience a little.
Well, it sounds like it's one of those things where at the end of the game, it's like I don't want to deal with this. Why are you making me? It's. I mean, it sounds like one of those things. Am I right?
Kind of, yeah. Like, it didn't dissuade me from playing. Like, it was less a case of, I don't want to deal with this. Why are you making me deal with this? And it was more of a case of, ugh, I got to go through this again. Fucking fine, whatever.
Yeah, because that's somewhat kind of happened to me too in the last two bosses in 4, where you're running through, you're trying to get to that last boss, and you're just for me, it was just like at a certain point, I thought so many shadows. Like I really don't want to deal with this unless I have to right now. And I mean, for the most part, the game was pretty good about it. If you knew what you were doing, you could just bolt right past every one. But sometimes you get caught, especially if you saw a treasure chest and got stuck behind it. That happened a lot.
I think that's going to kind of be a thing with any JRPG, unfortunately, where you're, to a certain extent, going to get to this point where eventually the gameplay is just going to be like, what in the fuck am I doing with my life? Kind of. The closest I've come to a game where it kept combat fresh really late into the game would have been something like Shadow Hearts, with like their weird circular rotation, like their weird Mario Golf fucking combat mechanics. But even then, it's like to a certain extent, eventually you're just like, I just want to fight. I don't want to line stuff up and try to hit it within like the correct colored sections of this circle. I just want to fucking hit the monster and move on with my day. And something like Persona 3 or Persona 4, where the combat is kind of a means to an end, I think like the combat got boring earlier than it probably would have just because there isn't as much depth to it. 5 kind of seems like they're trying to address that with like adding in, new elemental weaknesses and the guns as a standalone thing that you don't need to use but can be helpful in exploiting enemy weaknesses.
Oh yeah, I've completely forgot about the guns too.
Yeah, which is something that kind of came in from part 1. Part 1 had both guns and melee weapons, but guns had infinite ammunition. It was just another elemental weakness. Here, they've actually made it into something that seems like it could be useful for exploiting weaknesses without being a mandatory go-to thing for some characters, which is neat.
Okay, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think Five's combat would be a big problem as long as someone has just that almighty attack that gets all the enemies in one shot. That'll take care of things pretty quick.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair. Like that's going to be a concern for late game, I think, though.
Yeah, now Naoto was pretty much my go-to at the end there. Her and Yukiko, because I maxed her out, and her fire attacks were just devastating by that point. Those two took out everybody.
Yeah, Naoto was my go-to dungeon clearing character because Megiddo would just nuke most groups of enemies, whereas Yukiko was my boss killer because her what is it, burning petals, I believe, the savage damage fire attack that she had. Jesus Christ.
I was talking about this to my one friend because I'm a huge hockey fan too. So after I was done the game, it's like, if I had to assign individual NHL awards to party members, Yukiko would be the Hart Trophy winner. That's for most valuable player, and then Naoto would definitely be the Conn Life winner. That's for most valuable player in the playoffs because she comes in late in the game and just changed everything. Yeah, just the complete style I played. It was just totally different from there on.
I'm kind of interested to see how the characters in 5 interact with one another in that way, like how they work mechanically, like what skills they ultimately learn, if there's going to be even more of that variance from how they interact and how they work with one another that makes like, every member of the team viable in any situation, because in 4 I kind of felt like different characters were kind of still relegated to certain specific roles. In Golden, they mix this up a little bit with like the skills that you can get from going on like bike trips to the hot springs or to the beach to have them like learn new things, and like depending upon how you wanted to min max their stats and whatnot. But I still felt like Naoto was always going to be somebody you wanted to bring through dungeons, not to bosses. Teddy was always going to be somebody you would want to bring in dungeons, not in bosses, etc.
That was something I ended up feeling bad about too. At a certain point, I had my lineup and I was sticking to it, and there were just party members that just never got used anymore.
I always did a straight rotation. It was always Kanji, Teddy, and Naoto who went through dungeons, and Yukiko, Chie, and Yosuke who took on bosses.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you could change them before you went into bosses.
Oh yeah, you can just once you go like to a certain floor, like so like you can return to the last floor that you went to. So I would just make sure that I had somebody who could like do the escape spell to get us back out, and then I would switch the party up.
Oh, well now I know for next time.
Yeah, if you have a persona that has the ability to cast the escape spell, that's definitely worth it, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I didn't even think of that. I don't know, any final thoughts on what we've seen of five so far for you?
The only thing I'm really interested in right now is what are they going to do with the social links? Because that's a big thing to me. And there's two parts of that. The first part is I want to know how they're going to handle that within the party, because so far on the Atlas Japan website, the only videos I have seen have been for people who are outside of the party. And clearly they're going to have social links within the party because they've made all of these characters who are, for lack of a better way of describing it, waifu bait. Obviously, they want you to be able to have those social links so you can date your favorite waifu and move on with your day. But I want to know that they remember the lesson that they got from Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden, and that, everybody who's directly integral to the plot has that social link status where you can interact with them, where you can befriend them, where you can, make them part of your inner circle or whatever, and that, they feel like they have a meaningful connection to the player.
Yeah, I don't have as heavy a concern of that as you might, just because playing through four, I kind of realized, okay, they know what they're doing with this, and seeing the characters so far, just the core party, I'm like, all right, I am probably going to love Ryuji as soon as we get into this game. So that's not as big as a concern for me. Probably my biggest concern going in is being good at it, because seeing all the stuff, like you said earlier, just the guns and the melee weapons, that's probably going to be something I'm going to have to wrap my head around for a good while there. Also, I might seriously jeopardize like time spent in that game because the baseball minigame exists. That too. I'm I feel like I'm going to waste more time playing the baseball game than I really should, so I might screw up the first playthrough really bad.
Yeah, I did very much appreciate the fact that they had that shown off, especially because I really love that in Yakuza. I thought that was a neat thing to have in Yakuza. So the fact that that's coming back for Persona 5 is like, okay, I'm on board. I'm totally fine with that. The other thing that's kind of concerning to me also, again, works off of the idea of social links, because this is a thing that they still haven't fixed yet, and I'm not 100% sure how you would, but I'm interested to see if they can fix it or if they can at least make progress on it, and it is this. Social links outside of your direct friend group don't fucking matter.
Yeah, that's true.
They've made strides in fixing that from 3 to 4 by making more of your friends within the group part of your social link circle. But I'd like to see something where, if, for example, I date Ai Ebihara, she matters.
There was a moment in with my playthrough that I got in trouble with, but that whatever. I mean, yeah. I mean, I kind of realizing now. Shut up, Mark.
Did you screw up the Valentine's Day event?
No, what happened was I found out who my girlfriend was like a good way through the game, and then I realized I completely ignored and I was like maybe I should hang out with her, and I did, and Yukiko shows up and she got all mad, and I was like I'm sorry, and then I was like okay don't go near that girl anymore. That was pretty much it. Nothing to do with Valentine's Day. Basically, I got yelled at by my virtual girlfriend for as sad as that sounds.
No, it's totally understandable because, like I said, I was playing Persona 4 Golden for review because we got an advanced review copy of it from Atlas over at Die Hard Game Fan, and I did what I always do in that situation. I dated everybody, and I said, nothing has ever gone wrong with this before. Surely that will hold through in this playthrough.
They got you.
And no, I was wrong. I was wrong. My favorite that is simultaneously like the saddest and my favorite part of that game, where Yukiko just throws the fucking candy down on the desk and she's like, "Everybody, your candy is in this bag. Take your candy and go home."
Well, that moment still happens to you no matter what. I think what happened, like what happened for me is as she's leaving the room, she goes, "There's someone I want to see specifically after class," and she turns around and goes, "That means you."
No, in my game, she's like, "If you don't see your name on the candy in that bag, please come see me immediately." And then she gives you this look like, your fucking candy's not in that bag, right? And then just leaves.
Yeah, that's what happened. But like I went and it was a fun time at the beach in the middle of winter.
Yeah, the my favorite part is that everybody loses their shit at that moment. So it's like, everybody like comes in. Rise's like, "Oh, here's all your candy. I want to give candy to all of my friends. I appreciate everything you do." And Chie's like, "Well, that's really nice. I appreciate that." And they're like, "Wait, you didn't have any candy for the protagonist." She's like, "Oh, he's getting his candy later." And it's like, hey now.
That was one thing that bothered me about 4 the entire game. Like Rise just never seemed to get the message.
I mean, she's just very aggressive. She knows what she wants, and it's your D specifically.
Like I guess there's no way to compensate for like there's no way to program for you deciding on someone else, so they're just like, all right, we're making Rise this way no matter what. And I was like, there were so many times where there's just a conversation going on, and Rise would say something, and I'd be like, you do know I'm with Yukiko, right? Like you do know that.
She doesn't. They never do. And that was the one thing I kind of hated about Rise's plotline, is you get to that point where she's bawling her fucking eyes out, and your options are get into a relationship with Rise or be a dick.
No, but it's not as clear as that. It's hug her, which any normal person would do.
Right.
Or just stand there, and I'm like, I know what hugging is going to do.
Yeah,
I just have to...
it's get into a relationship with Rise or be a dick. And it's like, really?
I can't wait to see what those moments are like in 5, like what they're going to be.
Especially considering how much more eclectic the cast has been presented so far in comparison to Part 4's cast. Because, like, the characters in Part 4 still very much maintain the same aesthetic, from normal and interactions to outside interactions. Like, their class outfits and their real-life outfits don't have significant variance, and they feel sort of grounded in reality. Whereas this game, like, it's kind of some violent-ass Sentai show sort of stuff. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the game deals with that, I think.
Also, one thing I immediately noticed, like, from them showing the first dungeon in 5, was in 4, you had the creepy teacher to stay away from. In this game, they just went full on with that, like, no, this is the first boss.
Yeah, he is way creepier than Miss Kashiwagi or Professor Muraoka ever was, because Muraoka was just a weird, overly drunk, super prude dick. This guy, like, actively comes across as, like, stranger danger, like, abusive rapist, kind of. And holy shit, I am not on board with this guy at all.
Yeah, cause I'm sorry, I forgot her name again. What was her name again for?
Oh, Miss Kashiwagi.
I keep forgetting her name for some reason. It's probably because I stayed away, but yeah, there was the one where you could take her quest where she's like, "I need you to look for something for me," and I was just like, "No, just no." And then five's like, "Okay, you didn't like that. We'll ramp that up to 11."
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see where they go with that, like, just across the board, especially because if you're starting from that guy, how much worse do you make the other bosses, you know?
They're crazy enough to just throw something at you. So
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see just where everything goes. Like, the narrative is definitely going somewhere crazier and weirder and more absurd than anything we've seen before from it, which is good, and I like that. Though, as I said, I'm wondering what we're going to do with incorporating people who are outside of that framework into the group, and I also am wondering how they're going to handle like certain parts of the narrative, because it's clear Morgana kind of occupies that I guess Teddy role, and I really hope that it's more different from what those characters brought to the table.
so for the ones outside your party, I don't know. Everyone eventually becomes Phantom Thieves. You just give everyone a gun and they go in and they have to rip their face off and then they're just in.
Hey, you know what? It worked for Assassin's Creed. You don't rip your face off, but the other parts where you're just like, look, you're part of my family now. We're doing this. That's fine. I feel like you could make it work in this game. Just be like, listen, like, you know, you work for me now. It's okay. So everybody's on the inside. So you can just like, if you meet somebody who's not in your group and you want to date them, just be like, hey, listen, I kill people. Are you all right with that? Cool. Let's bone.
Well, you kill shadows, but yeah, I just now I'm thinking by the end of the game you just have this entire army behind you.
I would not object.
Oh man, that'd be cool, but I think I'm starting to get carried away with my expectations there.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably as good a place as any to wrap it up, because it definitely feels like Persona 5 is on the right track. And while there are places it can go that would be interesting, it's probably just going to be better at this point to wait and see what they announce and what they do with it.
I do have one request for Atlas if they're listening to this, and they are probably not,
But
but I will pay for that Catherine DLC if you bring it west. I will do it.
I'm pretty sure that they're going to bring all the DLC west, so more than
I will
likely.
I will fully admit to being part of the problem there, but I would buy it in a heartbeat. And I won't feel as bad because EA is nowhere to be seen on the game's box or anywhere in the credits, so
Yeah, I mean, Atlas isn't that bad with DLC. Like, even the DLC that they've included for SMT4 Apocalypse, I mostly did not object to. Though I don't necessarily know if we need like grinding locations for every single game. It's at least they're giving you value in it. I'll say that.
I want my character to look like Vince. Pro tag. I think we've said our piece here. I'm
Definitely.
not even sure what we're even talking about anymore. The Persona games are good. They're good. They're great. I love them.
Well, I do want to say thank you very much, Nick, for coming onto the podcast today. I do appreciate it, especially on relatively short notice to get this done in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, my thanks for having me on. My only hope is after this one that you feel the need to invite me back because I honestly can't tell you how well this one went.
Oh no, honestly, I feel like this went very well, and I have never had a bad experience recording on the podcast yet. So if you want to come back, you are welcome to do so pretty much anytime.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad I kept that streak going, and to everyone listening, thanks for putting up with my voice for nearly 2 hours. I hope you enjoyed hearing from a Persona noob, if that's the right term for it. But yeah, they're fun games. I like them. Thanks for listening to me and Mark talk about them.
And if you liked what you listened to today, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you comment. You can find us over on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/markbwriting, as well as on iTunes, Google Music, Stitcher, and pretty much anywhere that podcasts are hosted. If you do want to follow along outside of the podcast, you can follow me over on Twitter at MarkBWriting and at Facebook at MarkBWritingHome. And where can they follow you at, Nick?
I am at It's Nick on just about everything. ITSSNICK, all lowercase. YouTube, Twitter, PSN. I mean, I'll play Rocket League with anyone that wants to play Rocket League, pretty much. If there's a social media platform, there's probably an It's Nick on it. Or four, as we found out today with the Skype call.
Yeah, I think they were all yours though, because I looked them up by the email address.
Oh yeah, I'm 99% sure I own them all. I just forgot about them.
Well, join us next week when our topic will be who is the best waifu and why is it Yukiko? But on behalf of Nick Tricome, this is Mark B saying, stay safe out there, junkers.